maybe the most glam wedding planner that ever existed.
No, I doubt that. But I will take the title if you're giving it to me.
I'm a 100% giving it to you. Melissa Andre literally shows up in this outfit, just came from a site visit.
Yes, but I did change my shoes. But I did wear this top to the site visit.
So fabulous. Before you got here, I was talking to our producer about how you and I have known each other for like 8 years.
Or more.
Longer.
Yeah.
Since early days Loverly.
I know that because when I met you, I still lived in Canada. I
Yes.
still lived in Toronto.
She
And
was
I've lived in
Canadian.
LA for a decade, so it has to be more than a decade.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, you were just as glam.
Oh, I was probably a little bit more glam because I was less tired. I had a little more energy. Now
You still
I'm
have lots of
hanging on by
energy.
a thread.
No, you look amazing. But I was Googling you to, just tell him like about you, give you a quick rundown. And a couple things came up that I wanted to just run by you.
I've never done that.
Okay, well, I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
So I Googled Melissa Andre.
Oh my God.
And then Google suggested some searches that I wanted to just share with you.
Oh, okay.
Melissa Andre husband.
Oh, well, what does it say?
People know it's what they're suggesting you search. So basically, people are wondering, who is your husband?
People and me. We're all wondering. We're all wondering. Okay, what else?
So that was number one.
Okay.
Number two.
It is a question I have as well.
Well, Melissa Andre events, great.
Thank God.
Yes, that's a popular one.
Thank God.
Then there's Melissa Andre age.
Oh!
Inquiring minds want to know.
We do, in fact, know the answer to that one.
And then the next one.
Who's Googling that?
I don't know, but this is what
who's
Google
how
is
old
saying.
is Melissa Andre?
This is what Google's saying people are searching for. So it suggests searches. This is my favorite one.
Oh, God.
It's pretty chic to have someone searching your name and saying, Melissa Andre net worth.
Ooh!
People want to know.
We've made it. We've made it.
It's exciting.
That is kind of exciting.
But Melissa Andre events is on there.
They one of 4 searches. They're like, we kind of want to know about her business, but mostly we want to know who
How
she's
rich is she?
married to,
Yeah.
how much money she makes, and how old she is.
Yes. All important questions.
I don't know if they're important, but
The most important. Events. Events.
the
events.
most important. It should be like, how do I hire Melissa Andre? Not how old is this woman?
Well, you have the energy, so it's irrelevant.
Okay, yeah, it's true.
But Melissa Andre events, give us, MADCo.
Yes, Melissa Andre Design Company.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, they even have the Google search wrong.
You know what? My Canadian company was called Melissa Andre Events.
Oh, that's
And then
why.
the American company is called Melissa Andre Design Company because we just started doing more than events. We started doing pop-ups and products and, sets and all this stuff. So it's like a little bit more all-encompassing.
So for those who do not know you, give us the quick history background. Started the company, how you landed in Beverly Hills producing these over-the-top, I would call them like eventscapes because they're like landscapes meet
Like
design.
artscape.
Yeah,
like art,
installations.
I always say they're like art installations with food and music.
Yes.
Right? Or not all of them, but that's like how I like to if really people let me do whatever I want, that is the way that they look. But so, and people probably are like, how old is she? Because I'm always like, I've been doing this for over a decade and a half. I feel like maybe that's where it comes from.
You say that on
but
all your TikToks.
I do, because I feel like, I don't feel like I know that on TikTok, there's so much advice that comes from people who don't run businesses, and that if they do run businesses, it's like for such a short amount. This is not everyone, but there's so, you know what, I would almost say the less busy you are in your business, the more time you have to make TikToks. So it's just important that when you're taking information, you kind of like know where it's coming from. And I always say, don't take advice from anyone you wouldn't switch places with. Mm-hmm. So it like comes from that. So I make a point to be like, this advice that I'm giving you is not just like regurgitated from something else I heard on TikTok. I have literally done this thousands of times, and this is what I would tell you to do. That's why I say it a lot. But then it also leads people to be like, how old is she? I wonder, when did she start her business?
No, but it's true. You bring up a really good point. In the age of TikTok, there have been creators who have been born just by, I got engaged, I'm sharing my wedding planning journey, which I think there is a lot of merit in people sharing first-person experiences, what they learned along the way.
Absolutely.
But there is more merit in, I've done it 1,000 times, and if you're going to be giving advice on how to budget, how to save money, what to splurge on, probably best to get it from a professional.
It's so different to spend your own money on an event than to spend someone else's money. So I think a lot of people plan their own party and they think like that was so fun because I actually didn't have to answer to anyone. And they don't realize that when you start doing this for someone else and you take their money, they actually, judge you very differently. And it's just not at all the same as spending your own money on yourself. Like spending someone else's money, especially at the scale that we do it, that it could be like millions of someone's dollars, or hundreds of thousands or, whatever. It's such a different experience than if you're just like doing whatever you want for your family and friends or for yourself. So yeah, I think a lot of people that think they want to plan weddings after doing their wedding get like one client and are like, oh
just
no.
Kidding.
Yeah, just kidding. I don't want a client. I just want to do my own wedding again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wedding planning, wedding design, wedding logistics and operations.
Right.
It starts out the beginning sounding really glamorous. Yeah. And then as you get further and further down, and then people realize that, it's hundreds, if not thousands of hours. Laborious hours.
Yes. I just looked up the stat and it was like 500 and something hours to plan the average wedding. And of course, we don't do the average wedding. So for us, it's like tens of thousands of hours, but it's hundreds of hours. So you have to realize that like spending that on your own, party, it feels really different than spending hundreds of your hours on someone else's party. But I think, everything that I say, you have to like realize there's such a scale in wedding planning.
Okay, we're going to do an asterisk next to the MADCo events that you do are at a scale that are not for the average person.
Right.
You're dealing with the 0.01%.
Correct.
Which is what makes your events the most interesting to talk about for me.
Right.
Because it's like a fly on the wall of how the most luxurious, beautifully designed events are put together and executed.
I love you.
I just want to know.
Okay. So, this is the thing. The more you have going on at an event, and this is actually at all scales, you're going to have like, it's not one person that's like the chef and the florist and the furniture mover and the it's multiple people. And I am like a creative director, so every single decision kind of goes through me to make sure that they all lend themselves to the vision for the event. And like at MADCo, we say we have these like 4 ingredients that make up a MADCo event, which are luxury, alchemy, unpredictability, and balance. And that is like my personal aesthetic. And that's like the MADCo aesthetic. And I have a lot of people that write to me and they're like, now that you listed those out, I think those are mine too. So, you feel free to make them your own, everybody. You can do it however you want, or you could take mine, whatever. But I'm like a creative director. So all those kind of decisions go through me. And then and I think probably like the word creative director and custom and a lot of these words like are the most overused words like in the wedding. And it's probably like the world, the amount of time I hear people use like this custom blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's literally not custom. Or
it's
like
a template that you can customize.
Yeah, exactly. Or not even that. They're like this custom bar. I'm like, do you mean like you just swap the tequila out of it or so? You know what I mean? Like there's like you use a different tequila. It's like, no, we're like building it and scaling it and painting it and, really making a thing that didn't exist before, which is how we define custom. But anyways, so all of those people, they can manage themselves or they can be managed by a creative director and a production team. Like at MADCo, we have head of production, head of client experience, creative director, which is me, and then guest relations. So we have like 4 kind of heads of, what I think it takes to really manage one of these events. It's like the guests have their own person, the production team has their own person, the client has their own person, and all of the creative kind of goes through me. But a lot of weddings don't have a creative director or, and that's totally fine. And there's a couple things that can happen. Everyone just kind of does whatever they want. And then when it gets on site, sometimes it works together, sometimes it doesn't, but no one really notices. And, all of those decisions create different outcomes, and none of it is necessarily going to be bad. Like you can have 10 beautiful things in the room and it can be a beautiful room, or you can have one person actually designing those 10 things so that it creates one big, beautiful, balanced space. It's like kind of a little bit difficult to design or to explain because, if you put a bunch of flowers in a room, it just can't be bad. Like they could be in buckets and it's gorgeous. You could barely touch them and it's gorgeous, So
I guess that's the alchemy though. You're integrating like the space with the flowers, and then there's you got to like think about how it all flows and integrates together.
Yeah. And it definitely, at least at MADCo, isn't an experience where we hire 10 people and they all kind of do their own thing. And then we like give them a thumbs up because it isn't. It's like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's not like that. Like they come in, everything is already determined for them. And then they're like managed on site and we're editing on site. So it's like a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know it. So she's a Virgo because I think I've seen TikTok videos of you.
Oh God.
Personally folding flowers.
For sure. Oh my God. And that's like the least of anyone's worries. I'm like on a ladder. I'm like hanging from the ceiling. I'm like doing the whole thing. I'm like, I like the chandelier 33 inches above the table. I can tell it's 36 inches. And I'll like look at it and measure it and they'll be like, you're crazy. But I can tell.
So what's in your day of kit? Imagine a level.
Yeah, for sure.
A measuring tape.
A measuring tape is like in my purse all the time, in my car, my purse, my desk. I love like a measuring tape, and everyone's always like, "How about this like nifty new one that's like,
an app?
Digital? Yeah, no, an app or digital." And I'm like so basic. I love like just a basic measuring tape, like a Home Depot measuring tape.
You and my fiance would get along. He's got like 7,000 measuring tapes in our house.
Oh, every pocket.
He's a contractor.
Yes. Well, what's my excuse? You
are a contractor to some event. You are, to some extent, you are like building from the ground up events. And when people think about a planner or a designer, all of these different things, what's different about you is you physically build things.
Right. And we really understand production. So we don't kind of like, let's say, go to a lighting person and go, how should we light this? And they give us like a breakdown and we go, okay. We literally are like, we want this many pin spots pointed in these exact directions, hung from this exact truss, this distance from the table. So like we really understand production, which that's why we have like a production manager on each project, but it's definitely not like the typical experience of working with a wedding planner, right? Because you can rely on your vendors. You can be like, how do you think I should light this? And they'll, of course, tell you. We kind of produce everything in-house, and I know where every light is, and I have put it there.
So what's in your bag?
Okay, I have a lot of different kinds of like adhesives. So I have like different adhesive substances that like they stick from the front, back, and the sides, So
like waxes, like double-sided tapes.
Yeah, all of that, all sort of sticky stuff. Of course, we have like staple guns and that kind of thing, airline cable, that kind of thing. We have like a bunch of hooks and that kind of thing. I always have like every type of calligraphy pen because I'm like, well, last minute, like do someone's escort card because that happens. What else? We bring like we have like a Cricut that we'll use to
What's a Cricut?
It's like a machine. There's like a proper name for it, but it's like a machine that will like cut vinyl into whatever. So we'll be like on site creating something that needs to be created or needs to be redone, because like people change guest lists or all these things change. And if we're like doing a build like from the ground up, sometimes like a table might have to move, like not it's not ideal, but like sometimes these things happen.
You have to be flexible with
you
events.
have to be a little bit flexible when you're building something that didn't exist. Exactly like you would in a house. Except the thing about the house is that the guests aren't coming. So if you have your plan to build a house and then you hit a pipe or, whatever, you get to go like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you can't move in on Tuesday. You have to move in on Friday because we hit a pipe. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess we did do a remodel. But with a wedding or with an event, like the guests are coming at 7. It doesn't matter what you hit. It doesn't matter if it rained. It doesn't matter if it snowed. It doesn't matter if your FedEx package didn't get there. None of that matters. The guests are coming at 7. So you have to be making these changes and edits on site because the guests are coming. So it's like we don't have time to go like, oh, I guess we'll take another stab at it tomorrow. It's like it has to be done right now. Where's my Cricut?
Okay, so Cricut, love that.
Yes.
How many different cutting devices do you have in your bag?
We have like a lot, maybe like 8 to 10. So just
that was like a joke question, but that was a real answer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's just wild. We use it as minimally as we can, but you always end up using it. And then of course when we do destination, we ship one ahead of time, and then we bring one with us because just in case it doesn't get there. But also like it's literally a bag filled with sharp tools. So we've definitely opened them before and there's like nothing in it. And then there's like a letter being like, what the hell were you thinking? You absolutely cannot bring this on a plane. They like sub in all of our sharp tools with like, who the F are you? This is the weirdest package we've ever opened or whatever. So
you're like, just kidding. I'm a
wedding
designer.
planner. Yeah, exactly. It has our logo on it and stuff. I wonder how many people are like, who's like Melissa Andre Design Company? And they're like, oh, this crazy wedding planner is like, has knives and swords and lasers. And
we need to look deeper on the Google searches. Maybe we'll have MADCo sharp tools.
Yeah, like who cares about my age? You should be like, what's in her event kit? Be like, what does she pack with her? Yeah.
You do over the top events. I say that in a good way. I'm not saying that the design is over the top in a bad way. I mean, over the top meaning, here's my asterisk, that it's not what the average person event. You're doing, like I said, the 0.001%.
Right.
Will you tell us what the average budget is or what a starting minimum budget is? 'Cause I think people see images and have no idea what the cost of it is, but they put it on their Pinterest board or they put it on their Instagram favorites, and then they go to their planner and they say, I want that.
Right.
But that is a $500,000 floral budget.
Right.
And their floral budget is $15K.
Right.
So average event that you produce.
Okay, so to work with me personally as like your creative director the whole way through, and I do like a really small number, is between $500,000 and usually $5 million. There's no top line, but most of the weddings that I personally do start at $500K and, and around the $5 million mark. And then to work with, and this is just for weddings, because for non-weddings, our budgets are so different because there's so much less work. But and then to work with MADCo starts at $120,000. So between 120 and 500. So and then that's my team would do it, and I of course oversee it, and they use the MADCo method, and which is like our 6 phases of planning, and they use all the same templates and stuff. It's just like I'm not the one that's making every single design detail because it's just not required when you don't have that much of a budget, but I still oversee everything.
Scale of design.
Yeah, exactly.
And how many events do you end up doing a year?
Me personally, weddings under 10.
Okay.
But MADCo does like all kinds. Yeah, yes. They can do like 50 or 60. And then other events, it just kind of depends. Because
you're not just doing, you don't just do weddings and baby showers, bridal showers, but you also do brand dinners,
brand activations, Grammy parties, Coachella parties, Oscar parties, like random parties in people's houses, like pop-ups for brands that would last like the whole weekend. So all of those type of parties are almost like dependent on the date. So it's like if we're doing a Grammy party that night, we're probably only doing one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no set number. It kind of depends on the scale.
I want you to talk about how you built the business to this point, because that scale is major.
Right.
But like, what was that first big budget event that you did?
I don't know if this is the thing. A lot of like younger planners ask me this, or they'll say like, you're so lucky because you get these like really big budgets. And the thing to kind of like understand is when I first started, I was working in fashion and I was doing a totally fashion and beauty, and I was doing that sort of event. And I wanted to kind of go off on my own because I wanted to explore like a bunch of different aesthetics. And I had so many ideas that I was like, I could never execute this for this client because, you know, when you work with brands, they have their own aesthetic. So you have to create within their aesthetic. And so I wanted to do my own thing. And so the first couple of private parties that I didn't have huge budgets, but it was like I could take $30,000 and make it look like $100,000 because I was just like doing so much myself. And it was just like the way that I used the budget. And
you were flexing your creativity.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like they looked so much more expensive. And I still say that, like, you know, we were just talking to one of our brides who was like, I don't want to spend more than, you know, $350. And I was like, oh, MADCo will make that look like $500, which is a crazy, like, I understand as I say that, I was like, oh, we can make that look like $500K, like for sure. So that's, you know, that's not the worry. But, when I started, that's like really what I was doing. I was like making them look so much like more expensive than they were, for better or for worse. But I think,
and then that attracted those bigger budget clients.
Exactly. It was like people from those venues were like, "Who the hell did this? We've never seen this space look like this." You know, even like I remember someone referred me to Drake, and they like, you know, wrote to me and were like, you know, Drake wants to meet you. He like loves your work. You know, we just like heard people talking about your events, you know, so it's like to inspire that kind of like, you know, if you want people to talk about you, you have to give them something worth talking about, type of thing. You know, so I was just kind of giving people something to talk about. So I don't like really remember at what point I was making it look like more than it was and actually getting those budgets. Like I have no idea at what point like that happened because I still feel like I do that. I still feel like even if someone gives me $1 million, I make it look like 2 million. So it's like, that's just the way we do it.
One of the things that you created early on that I remember were your hand sculpture clouds.
Right.
These installations, which you've told me in the past took like hours and hours.
Yeah, they like start with paper mache and then, yeah.
But that became a thing that people then started to replicate.
Of course,
it became a thing that everyone wanted.
Yes.
Right. How do you as a designer and a creative who puts your work out there after it's been, you know, you've spent hours and you've been hired to do it, but then you go above and beyond.
Right.
How do you feel when you see your work then like attempted to be replicated?
I mean, usually by the time that people have like replicated it, it's like the thing is no one can really catch up to you when they're copying you, you know, like instantly as soon as someone's copying you, they're behind you. So you have to like think about that. I don't know if it's like flattering
is
or
it
something
flattering?
when
Yeah.
people
or is it annoying?
I don't really feel flattered. I've never felt flattered per se. But you know, you just kind of
But it's a thing that's happened to you a lot, I feel like. Like you're very much someone who does something completely different.
Right.
And then next thing you know,
that sounds cool.
Yeah. And next thing you know that, you know, other people are doing it and then you see it everywhere. Like I think one of them was, so the clouds was a big thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember, was it like parasols or something? You had like umbrellas or things hanging.
I did this like one party with these like rainbow parasols, and then Khloe Kardashian had one of her birthdays for True, and it had like this kind of identical installation, even with like the colored smoke and everything. And you know, that was like a 1-for-1, side by side, like the identical kind of install. That's probably what you're talking about. Because I don't actually use parasols a lot.
Yeah.
But on that day,
and that was not flattering.
I just, you know what? It's like, I don't even know. Like, do people know where now with like social media? At one point, it was like you would have known that you were really taking that idea from me. At this point, I don't even know. Like the things that I see, I don't even know where anything comes from anymore. But just was just like so widespread and it's reposted like so many times that I'm like, how did you even get this? Like we did this, you guys published it. We did this wedding in Todos Santos for Morgan and Colby. And before we had released any photos, screenshots of guests' IG stories were on Pinterest. And I was and because I started seeing them on Pinterest. Is that
the full archway?
No, that's the one with like the fabric in that old canning factory and those ruins So it's like people are screenshotting people's IG stories and then uploading that content. So even though we're holding it back,
you don't know where you can't control the spread.
You can't really control it anymore. So it's like it's more like a question of that. Actually, I'm like, how are you guys getting all of this?
That's so interesting.
I guess I know the answer. I just said exactly where they're getting all of this. But I think that if you're like in the position to hire me and you're in my city and I mean, we work internationally, but like if you're in my city and you are in the position to hire me, then you should.
Done. Sold. Because you're so involved in the planning process and people are hiring you, right? They want to work with you.
Yeah.
What is your like vetting process? Because you're also vetting like, do I want to work with you?
Yeah.
Because you're essentially committing to thousands of hours.
Thousands of hours. Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I think like they just need to really, there's like this funny thing that it doesn't happen to me anymore. But at one point, over a decade ago, people would be like, I really want to work with you. And then they would show me. Now I don't really ask anyone to show me anything that they like. I only ask them to show me what they don't like. But at one point, well over a decade ago, I'd be like, show me what you like. And then they would show me all this stuff that I'd be like, well, why on earth would you want to work with me? Like, go work with this person. A, I don't do this. And B, this person looks like they may be available to work with you. So, it just can't be that, they need to kind of like really be on board for this experience that is like pretty custom and a little bit scary, because when you're making something that didn't exist, it's like, I can't do a sample. Like, I don't know, I should see if people still do this, but there was a time where there was like a lot of wedding shows on television. And in all the wedding shows, they would have this sample meeting, and they would like do this tablescape and they would have this sample meeting. And like my poor clients rarely get that much of a sample meeting, because it's like, oh, well, this is being made custom and these I'm flying in for you. So you might get like a picture. Like they definitely don't get nothing, but it's not like I go
it's
to
like a rendering or an idea of what it is, but they're not going to see the actual physical thing because you're having linens like
they're being made and then
yeah.
hand painted, and then like, oh, these glasses are not just from a rental house that I can just have shipped to you. Like I'm like sourcing them and bringing them in and, you know, that kind of thing. So not to say we don't ever use rentals, but like, you know, for example, we did this wedding in Puerto Rico for Kelly Oubre and his wife Shailyn, and we had these like zodiac plates that we brought in from Italy, and then they match the zodiac signs of the guests. So I was like, because we have like a client, we have a guest relations manager. Like they know all the guests, they know all their flights, they know how they're getting in and out. So they have all their passports, so they have their birthdays. So we, you know, could do this for them without, really A, bothering anyone, and B, not even necessarily like we don't even really need to mention that we're doing that to the client. Like we can, but once they know what the tableware is going to look like, they didn't even think to go, wait, are these zodiac signs actually going to match the guests? It's like we can do that on the back end without them even really needing, to know that we're doing it. But, something like that, it's like that was all special ordered and shipped to Puerto Rico. And then we had these like cloches, these domes over the table, over the amuse-bouche. Those were made and they never saw those. They saw like what they could sort of look like. But I think that once you have a portfolio that is like big enough and strong enough that your clients, and this is part of like the vetting, your clients trust you, you know, because it's like the same person who did this couldn't possibly just out of nowhere drop the ball that hard. You know, we have like such a long track record of like doing these beautiful things. It would be insane to all of a sudden like drop the ball that hard, you know? So it's
not just that they have to trust the process, but also they're signing up for basically you to design every single detail with their input-ish.
Yeah.
Is it like, ish, or do you take a lot of input?
You know what? I am open to taking input. They just don't really give it to me anymore. Thank God. But no, they don't. Like, sometimes they do at the beginning. And then sometimes I'll do like 2 designs and I'll like give myself the extra work. And I'm like, this is kind of what I think you want. This is what I think you should have. And they're like, oh, you can throw what I thought I wanted like out the window. So, you know, because this is the thing is like, this is all I do. So I'm supposed to be able to do it better, you know? It's not like a...
You do it better.
Oh, thank you. I love you. But it's not like a representation of like, I don't know. Sometimes I think, and maybe you could tell me, you talk to probably like even more brides than I do, but do you think that brides ever feel like, oh my God, I don't know exactly what I want, that's a miss? Or like, have I not thought hard enough about it? Or like,
I think there's 2 different types of brides. There's the bride that wants to be designed, be a part of every single decision because this is so fun for them. 1. 2, they are very aesthetically driven.
Right.
And maybe they do it in their career outside of this, right? They're something that in their personal life or work life is design driven. So they want to be involved.
Right.
That person, they like to hire and touch every part of it.
Right.
Then I've seen another segment where it's, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
I want someone to just do it for me.
I feel like my brides are like in the middle because they're all so aesthetically inclined, but then they still let me do it.
Well, it's because maybe they trust that your aesthetic will check the box for them.
I hope so.
I mean, that's
like, I always say like my biggest fear. Like imagine I walk in one day and it's like, or like the bride walks in one day, bride, groom, whoever's getting married, asterisk, anyone who's getting married, you know, and I'm like, isn't it amazing? And they're like, I hate it.
Which has never happened.
It's never happened.
It's your worst nightmare.
But it is like my worst nightmare because it's like, okay, well, I've been setting it up for 8 days, so I can't exactly change it. So, but sometimes like my clients don't know that much about design. And then like a couple days before I like freak out and I tell them, I'm like, I need you to tell, like I just did this with Shylin Uber. Like a couple of days before the wedding, I was like, I just need to make sure that you're not like, I'm creating this field of flowers and this like curved aisle that matches the exact same measurement from your table. And I need to like make sure that you're not envisioning in your mind getting married under a structure because you're not going to have one. And if like you're doing your makeup that day and you look out the window and you go, where's my structure? I can't make you one. I can't build you one. So it's like sometimes I like freak out a little bit and I'm like, let me just make sure that you know, like similarly that same wedding, I'm like, I don't know what you think your reception is going to be, but like there's not one flower. Like it is like this 360 room of like projection mapping. Like they were like, we want it to be out of this world. That's all they said. And so I literally like make this room, this 360 degree like projection mapping room where they're like in the clouds and in outer space and like floating on air. And then I'm like a couple days before, I'm like, I want to make sure that you know that you're not going to get there and it's like chandeliers and candelabras and like pink rose. It's not going to be that. And they're like, sounds great.
You surprise
thank God
your couples all the time then.
If they want to be surprised, but I get like it really depends on the couple, but usually like the design that I present even initially is a surprise because it's not like they ever describe what they end up getting. You know, like we have like an initial intake form and I ask questions on it that like start to give me a sense of like their style and their taste. And the way that I design is like I'm always designing And then I marry one of the designs to that couple after I meet the couple. And then I tweak it because every project has restrictions. The guest list, the room, the location, the time of year, those are the restrictions. That's why like I have such an opinion about like AI design and like things like that. But because it's like, oh, restriction free, like, okay.
Wait.
Sorry,
what
I
do you
went
mean?
Left turn.
AI design, meaning like people are using AI to design
their weddings
events.
and stuff, right? And I'm like, cool, don't worry about gravity or anything. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy. But, so that's like my process. I'm designing all the time. I have enough ideas to have 1 million designs for every one client. Then I pick like and I'm like tweaking them all the time. And like, because I'm just designing like in my head all the time. Like I'm like driving and I'm like, that's a cool street sign, except I wish it was like this. Like that's just like what I'm doing all the time. Like nothing can be as it is. I'm real chill.
The creative process for people hits them when they're doing things that are like in flow state where you're not fully concentrating. So if you have been driving for a long time,
I'm not concentrating.
You're not fully concentrating.
Right.
You're kind of in that state of mind. That's why they say the shower too. You're concentrating when you're not really concentrating when you're doing this. It's like that's when you can almost channel ideas.
Kind of, right. Yeah, exactly. So I pair the design and then I take all the restrictions from that project, which then forces the design in other directions, right? Because like the design as it lives in my head or like the idea as it lives in my head doesn't belong to anyone. So it needs to be
refined.
Yeah, refined.
Well, I think that for the creative process, for me at least, the more restrictions I have or constraints, I should say, actually is super helpful.
Right.
Because it forces creativity.
Right.
Whether it's the space, the budget, the timeline, right? It forces you to essentially refine the idea and come up with creative ways to solve for it. Right. So your ideas when they're floating, they're waiting for those restrictions.
They're waiting for those. I say I do this like lecture at NYU. They have like a Masters of Events program. And I have this little thing in my lecture that I do where I'm like, there's no job for, there's no market for someone who makes like mood boards for things that don't ever like materialize. You know, it's like called your own personal like Tumblr. Like you can do that day and night, like for yourself, but it's not a job. And you're getting your master's because you want a job. So it's like really important to actually focus on execution rather than like a bunch of things stuck to a board that never actually have to come to life, which I think is what turns wedding planning from like a hobby into a job, and then from a job into a business is like really, it's mainly about that execution, because it doesn't really matter how many good ideas I have if I can't make any of them happen.
You brought up something that I want to double click on, which is a lot of planners or designers starting out will do a photo shoot.
Right.
Looks really, really beautiful.
Right.
It's a tablescape.
Right.
It's, a installation.
Right.
But that has never actually been with a group of 180 people flowing through a day, an event.
Right.
What are your thoughts on these planners who are popping up?
Right.
Putting out content.
The thing is that like the thing about the wedding client and like we don't have to talk about Sepia Bride, but it's like, that whole like TikTok thing about, do you know?
Tell me, no.
Oh my God. Okay. No, I can't even go there.
What is it? Tell me. The Sepia Bride? What's the Sepia Bride?
Are you not on TikTok?
I am, but like I try to limit my time. Tell me. What?
Well, don't do that.
What's the Sepia Bride?
No, hold on. Let me go. Let me go back. No, first let me say that with editorials, the reason that people do them is because like they work. So if you can get this is the thing, is that the client, the end user, the bride, the groom, it's like not repeat business, so the wedding industry is really unique from other industries in the way that like you are getting hired by someone that very often doesn't know better, which kind of sucks, but also why there's like no barrier there, and why I go, I've been doing this for 15 plus years. it's not, my thing about people who do editorials, I don't have a problem with editorials. I have a problem with editorials that have nothing new. It's like, if you're just doing something that someone over there has done for 800 people with a 3-hour time limit, then who cares? If you're going to have no restrictions, show me something good.
Yeah.
Blow my mind. It's an editorial. That's what I have to say. I see like too many that I'm like,
not
boring.
impressed by.
Yeah. Boring. If I had no restrictions, oh my God. I don't really have time to do editorials, but like I want to in my heart and soul, because great, no restrictions.
I saw one of your TikToks that literally I LOL'd at.
Oh God.
It's you. It's the cash bar situation.
It's like a hot topic. Yes. It's a hot topic. Cash bar and wedding gifts are the most like clickbaity. I didn't know that. I was like, that's not why I made the TikTok. I wasn't like, ooh, how do I get, because it has like nothing to do with that, what I do. I'm just answering questions. But cash bars really, gets people going, because I was saying that you can't have a cash bar at a wedding, because a wedding is an extension of any other party that you would host. And like, imagine you were inviting people to your home and, you were like, oh, thank you for coming. Look at my new house. Do you want, a glass of wine? And they're like, I'd love one. You go, perfect. That would be $12. Like that would be crazy. You know what I mean? And a wedding is just like an extension of any other party. It's just a wedding, right? Like you wouldn't do that at any other. Yeah, because you're a host. Yes, you're a host. So you have to host. Similarly, I think that you can have an amazing wedding that's like pink velvet wedding cake in the garden with champagne. I think you can also do that. Like I also have a TikTok where someone goes, what would you do if you only had $3,000? I'm like, this is what I would do. This is how I would have a $3,000 wedding. So I'm not telling anyone to have $1 million wedding. I'm more telling people that like, you can't have a cash register at your wedding. I don't think you can have a cash register. And then people really that's my opinion, people really kind of go in and then they're like, it's not I think a lot of people are like, well, if I'm paying for your food, then you should pay for your drink. It turns into like this thing. And my thing is always like, you should host to the best of your ability and don't, overcommit. Don't, do more than you can and just be like an amazing, gracious host. You can have, because you chose the date, you chose what's on the menu, you chose the time of day, you chose the location, you chose how many people were coming. You could have had 10 people for a brunch wedding, which I've done, which would be wildly less expensive than 400 people on a Saturday night. But you made that decision, so you have to be able to kind of like support the decision that you made.
Agree.
That's my take, but people freak out and then they kind of say like, people should have to pay this much. They get really mad. And then I'm like, well, if people have to pay that much, you may as well sell tickets. Not a carnival. Like, where you like sell tickets and give people talk about wristbands and cash register and drink tickets. I'm like, this is starting to sound like a carnival. And it is not.
It's not a carnival.
It's not a carnival.
Okay, one other thing though. You mentioned cash gifts and wedding gifts.
Yes. So my take is that you can't tell people what to give you. And
so you don't believe in the wedding registry?
I believe in the wedding registry only because it does help guests. So if a guest wants to give you a gift, and by the way, let me say, I love giving wedding gifts. I love giving wedding gifts. And let me also say, I usually give cash. Like 99% of the time. I think maybe one time in my life I haven't given cash. And it was like I made them something. Anyway. People were like, you made them something. What, a macaroni necklace? Like, no. Don't get me started. It was like they were having a baby and I like did their nursery for that, so cute. I didn't give them a cash gift. I did this for them. But anyway, let me say, as I say this, I actually usually give money to people when I go to their wedding. But my take is that you can't tell anyone what to give you. You can't. Like, we're adults. You invite people. The guest job is to celebrate with you, to, be so happy and to support you. It's not to like pay for their ticket or to pay off your vendor bills. Like, you made all those decisions. And people really do not like this take. They're like, no, it must be at least this much money. Or I just had someone say like, if they don't give me a good gift, then they lose privileges at the wedding. I just posted this. And then they were like, like maybe they don't get dessert or maybe they don't get a drink. And I responded to the TikTok because I was like, tell me the logistics of this. I've never been to one of these weddings. Like, what happened? You open the gift and then you walk them to the bartender and you're like, no champagne for this person? Or like, do you tell the waiter like no dessert at table 17? Like, what are the logistics of this? And
That's
the person
wild.
responded back and they were like, they won't think it's so funny when all of a sudden they get a wristband saying that they can't drink from, I don't know. But I was like, I have a lot of questions about like the logistics of, that people have.
This is what TikTok has done to weddings.
To weddings, or maybe TikTok is just informing us.
Like maybe
people were doing this and now they're just telling me. And they're like, what do you mean?
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm so like, I found out on TikTok, like I love TikTok and it can't go away. I love it. Okay. And people tell me these things, like someone wrote to me like that, it was really hard, blah, blah, this wedding, because there wasn't enough tables and chairs. So we had to stand and wait for a place to sit. And I'm like, I've never heard of this, like you went to the wedding and there was an arbitrary number of tables and chairs that didn't match the guest count. And the person's like, yeah. And I'm like, tell me what happened. Like, I feel like
I feel like that's a whole podcast. People on TikTok telling stories, or are you breaking down the stories?
I tell people if I had a podcast, it would just be called, This is What Happened at My Wedding, or like, you'll never guess what happened at this wedding, because people tell me these like crazy things, or I'll be like, I'm like acting like I'm Beyonce and I get recognized, but I don't. But the other day, only like, maybe if someone is on wedding TikTok, they might be like, oh, Melissa. And I was like washing my hands in the bathroom, and this girl's like, Melissa Andre. And I'm like, hey, babe. And then she's like, I have to tell you what happened at my wedding, and people stop me all the time. Brides, I don't think I'm Beyonce. Listen, I know how this sounds, but people tell me these stories. Like I'll have brides that are like, I wish I hired you. I wish I found you before my wedding. And then I'm like, tell me what happened. It's not so I can talk shit about the planner. I just like the tea is so good to me, Like, did you see the thing I posted the other day? Someone sent out wedding invitations and they were like, okay, do you want fish or steak? And everyone got to the wedding and it was ramen.
No.
Wedding tea is so good. It is so good. Like we would never know this stuff existed if it was not for TikTok. My version of like I've never watched Love Island. I do not watch people date. On Bachelor, no, I don't. I have my own dating things to watch. Okay, it's my life. But it's like wedding tea. How is this not a show?
It's so juicy.
It's so juicy. Ramen noodles. Someone said once that they had karaoke. They went to a wedding and they had karaoke. And I was like, sounds fun. How did it go? Like, tell me. Like, I wouldn't know these things.
I feel like you could make that cute.
You can make it cute. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, sounds fun. Like, tell me more. Like, I just want to go to people's weddings that I didn't plan.
I mean, I'll go with you. And maybe we bring a camera crew.
This could be our thing. This is so interesting. Like, invite me to your wedding. Is this thing on? Invite me to your wedding. I will come.
This has been the Loverly Wedding Podcast. We are hosted by Kelly Khalil, produced by Shaylin Carroll, Kayla Fitzgerald, Emily Feig, and Jennifer Alvarado. Watch the podcast on YouTube by subscribing to our channel, and follow us and listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and every major RSS feed.